Hello everyone, I'm Kana Taku. PTG, or post-traumatic growth, is defined as psychological growth after adversity. But there are times that people say and believe that they changed, even though they really haven't. Perhaps we claim that we have become much better people with enhanced priorities in our lives. But others in our lives would say, no, you haven't really changed all that much. You are still acting like the same person. Does this mean that we are fooling ourselves or that we are biased about our own growth? It is possible to have authentic growth, which we call PTG, but not all reports are authentic. The term for this latter concept would be illusory growth. There are many different perspectives on determining if reported growth is illusory or authentic. So today, I want to discuss 3 of them. The first is focused on coping. The second focuses on the difference in behavior prior to the event and after the event. And the third focuses on psychological struggle that is shown in the PTG theoretical model. Researchers who take the first approach would say if people who are in denial about what has happened to them or how they are feeling about it are most likely to experience illusory growth. This was first shown in Dr. Meeker and his colleagues' Jan's face model. They would call constructive growth if an individual says that they have made a positive change, cope well, definitely not in denial or avoidance, and shows a long-lasting positive adjustment. As they explained, it is possible to experience both constructive and illusory growth over time. We might experience illusory growth immediately after a traumatic event as a temporary coping mechanism, but some may eventually experience constructive growth in the end. Based on their model, illusory growth is generally associated with denial, avoidance, or wishful thinking. So researchers who take this approach often look at coping, well-being, adjustment, and sometimes personality like optimism. The second approach requires 2 time points in order to demonstrate growth as quantifiable change. They must be able to prove who they were before the event and who they are after the event. They don't necessarily need to claim or recognize any change on their own, as researchers will determine that numerically. This difference or subtraction is used to track it as quantifiable or accountable change. This idea is offered by Dr. Fraser and her colleagues. They explained that if growth is authentic, it should reflect the actual changes of behaviors between pre- and post-traumatic event. One of the potential limitations of this approach is that our measurements may not be the same and most likely change over time. What we may list as a 5, for example, for compassion before trauma may look very different from a 5 in compassion after a traumatic event. Even though on a mathematical level, the difference in these numbers would look like 0. The third approach focuses on psychological struggle. Our lab is looking at self-report as PTG if the reports include all key components outlined as psychological struggle in the PTG theoretical model. The key components include impactful triggering event, challenge of our core beliefs, constant thought and try to make sense of it, and then expression of thoughts and emotions. If these components are missing, then self-reports of growth would not be considered PTG. I obviously like our approach with the focus on here and now instead of past or future performance, because this is consistent with how I practiced back in Japan as a clinical psychologist. But this requirement of expression of all of the components means that People who are not conscious of their psychological struggle or who are unable to express these aspects clearly may have their growth mistakenly considered illusory. So to summarize, in the first perspective, if somebody says they have changed in a positive way just so that they mainly feel at least okay after the most painful trauma, then their reports are likely to be deemed inaccurate and therefore illusory. In the second perspective, if somebody knew, for example, they can see things clearly before the traumatic event, and also they feel like they now can see things clearly after their traumatic event, we still have to say there are no changes because the expressions are the same. If these individuals said they changed, then their reports are most likely illusory, even though the meaning of being able to see clearly for that individual might have actually changed. Finally, in the third perspective, we believe reports are accurate and growth has occurred if a person can reflect and explain how they have changed following the traumatic event, when the reports include psychological struggle, such as the impact of event and then everything that is in the PDG model. Although all three approaches have benefits and limitations, no consensus has been reached as to how illusory growth should be defined and then accurately measured. It seems ironic or rather scary that our assessment of illusory growth may be inaccurate though. Well, if you have any feedback or comments, please leave them below. Thank you for watching. I will see you soon.